What's good, you guys? Daniel Cruz here, back with another episode of Cook with Cruz. Today I'm going to be breaking down a beat that I had a couple requests on that was on my channel. I actually just released this recently. It's called Another Way. So we're going to dive into that one and see how it was made, everything I did to it. If you're liking the breakdowns, please leave a thumbs up on the video for me. I'd really appreciate it. And of course, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on these videos every Sunday. Also, keep leaving me comments on beats you want to see broken down. I'm releasing new beats during the week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So especially if you hear something new come out and you want to see it broken down just like this one, since this one's pretty recent, let me know in the comments which beat that is, or go to that video and comment and let me know. And I'll definitely make an episode breaking that one down. But without further ado, let's jump in and see how Another Way was made. Alright, so jumping into the beat, what started it off was a sample by Dylan Graham. Shout out to Dylan Graham. Let me go ahead and play the raw consolidated file that kind of sparked everything. Alright, so there goes a taste of what sparked everything for me. I heard that and instantly had a vision for what I wanted to do with it. So I did have the tracked out files to the sample, so I had a little more control over everything. I did cut a lot of stuff out. I wanted to take the main elements of it and keep that. So if we look just real quick in the playlist, I'm really working with 1, 2, 3, 4 instruments total. I had or replay the keys, which I'll show you later. So simplicity is key. I just wanted the main elements of that sample. So starting off in the beginning here, these are the main chords here for the sample that was playing throughout. So that part is super important. That's our foundation right there. So I combined those keys with a vocal sample that was playing later in the consolidated version of the sample. So those chords that I just played plus this vocal sample is all I needed for the beat, really, to get it going. Not to mention, I didn't even change the key or anything. All I did was slow it down a little bit. I believe the original was a little faster. Didn't want to change the key. I felt like the overall vibe of the key that was in, I believe it's B flat minor, just fit perfectly. So I didn't want to mess with that. Left it as is. You don't really need to overdo it if it sounds good already. So I'm not trying to try too much to try to sound too different or change the original if it sounds good already. So those two right there that's all I need to make the beat right there. So let's go into the drop of the verse. Obviously we do need some bass, which will drop in here. For the bass, I'm using Green Taurus bass. Been using this bass for years. Pretty popular, sounds good. I do turn on the slide features here. I do got a little slide here, I'll show you. And for this, just basically playing the root notes of the chords, nothing crazy. So all together on our drop for the verse, this is what our instruments are going to be. So that's all I really need right there. Let's go ahead and start going over the drums now so we can see how those come in. So we're going to start off here with our kick. Really open and simple here. This is our, I guess, percussion rim or snare here that I use as a snare. We have an open hat. We have another open hat here that I have playing on the one of every bar. These are some closed hats here that I have from Contact, the, what is this, the 60s drum kit, Abbey Road 60s drummer. Just doing a real basic pattern here. This is another closed hat, which I'll layer up later on. This is a reverberated snare that I got playing at the end of, I guess, every 4 bars or so. That's just gonna layer up. So that wraps up all the drums that I'm gonna use throughout the beat. Let me go ahead and play how the drums come in on the start of the verse now. So this is what our first 4 bars are gonna sound like right here. So there goes our drums starting out. So let me run it back. We'll play everything all together to hear how it comes in. So that's how we're coming in. As you can see, simplicity is key. That's all we really need. You could really just loop that and just have it as a beat. So let's move on to the second half of the verse here. I'm going to add a couple things. First thing we're gonna do is gonna add this reverse guitar that was in the files for the sample. And because I'm adding this in, I'm going to take the chords out because I don't want too much going on. So here's what it sounds like with now the reverse guitar and the vocal sample. And one more thing I'm going to add right here. I'm going to replay the piano that was in the original sample. I really liked how the piano was. I just changed a couple little things, but mostly I replayed it because there was a low pass filter, I believe, on the original, and I wanted the piano to stand out a little bit more instead of being kind of muffled and behind the scenes. So for the most part, I replayed it almost exactly. I didn't do another chord that he played, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same piano. Again, I replayed it just so I can have it stand out a little bit more. So that overall is going to add a nice touch to the beat here. As far as instruments go, that's all we need. One thing I did forget about the drums, I did add this kind of live hat loop right here. Very simple. It's just going to layer up with the other hats I already have playing. Not to mention, we're adding this hat pattern in here, which I played in the pattern earlier. So this part's going to come in as well. So that's all we're going to add for this part. Let's run it back now and play it going into the second half of the verse. And just to touch base real quick, I believe a couple comments on this beat when they made the request, they were asking about the mix specifically on this beat. So I don't do anything crazy to my mixes. I mentioned this in another video where I kind of went in depth with the mixing. So for me personally, my personal opinion, the number one priority to get your mix good is having your levels right. So what I personally like to do, pretty much 99% of the time I'm making beats now, I'm working with another sample, if not my own sample. But what I do when I get that melody or whatever VST instrument you're using, I bring the volume on the mixer at least halfway down. So I drop it 50% from, the default, which is 0 dB. So I drop it all the way down. I start quiet, and then I start adding in drums, and then you can hear, okay, maybe I need to turn up the instruments a little bit more, or maybe I need to turn them a little bit down. But I think the biggest problem is people have their instruments just way too loud, and it's competing with the drums for dB space or EQ space. So that's what makes the mix sound muddy. So I always start with all my instruments pretty quiet. Once I start adding in drums, then I'll bring the instruments up. And that's how you're gonna get your drums to pop more. I think in hip hop especially, what we hear and define as a good mix is when, the drums are really popping and clear. So I try to make that the forefront, especially the kick drum, the 808. Make sure you turn your instruments down, and I think you should be fine. As you can see here in the mixer, look at, I'm not even really adding anything. I'm just having my levels down. The chords track right here, this is our main instrument. I believe I had it somewhere down here, and then I just gradually turned it up until I felt like it was at a good enough level. But look at my instruments, they're not 0 dB'd out. I like to turn them down. Again, this depends on, especially with samples, because the dynamics of the samples are always going to be different. If you look at the wave right here, you can see they're not too loud, they're not normalized. So that's why I like to set like a foundation when I'm starting out on the fader. What is this, around negative 21 dB? Just drop it down. When you start adding drums, and then you'll hear, okay, I need to turn my instruments up a little bit, or maybe even down a little bit. So, but again, going through, I'm not really adding much. I'm doing reverb and basic EQ stuff just to get it to sound how I want. I cut out highs sometimes. One last thing about my mixing before we move on. This was in another video as well. I have this low cut send or low cut bus track here, and basically I cut everything below 100 hertz. I double cut it actually, pulled up an EQ. You can use whatever you want. Brick walled it. Everything below 100 hertz is gone. So I route everything that's not a kick or an 808 to this track, unless it's a specific instrument where I want some low frequencies. So when you're routing everything that's not a kick or 808 or bass to this track, all the lows are going to cut out, which means it's going to give more EQ space for your 808 kick and bass. So another little tip there. But as you can see, I'm not doing anything crazy to my mix. Leveling is, again, this is all my opinion, number one priority. So anyways, moving on. That's our whole verse. We're going to jump into the hook now. For the hook, I do thin it out a lot. As we can see here, most of the drums are going to come out. I bring our chords plus the guitar together. We're just going to have the kick and the snare rim here, our bass of course. And this keys pattern is exactly what I played right here, except we're going to drop down an octave. The only thing different other than the octave changed, if you got a good ear, was this last chord. I'm just playing a bass F minor instead of F minor 7. So I took out this note right here, which was in the high keys. So that is what our hook is going to be. So let's bring it back to the end of the verse, into the hook, and we're just going to rinse and repeat. The second verse is going to be the same, and so on. So let's run it back and see how it sounds all together. So that wraps up the whole beat, another way how it was made. Shout out to Dylan Graham for the crazy sample, giving me the vision to make this beat. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comments what you think of the beat if this is your first time hearing it. Let me know if you have any questions as well, especially with mixing and stuff. I'll definitely get back to you on that. Keep feeding me with suggestions, some beats that you want to see broken down. I will 100% do them. All you gotta do is just leave a comment on this video of the beat title, or just go to the beat on my channel, comment on that video, and I will get to it. Once again, please leave a thumbs up on the video if you enjoyed today's breakdown. Make sure you're subscribed, of course. But that is all for me today. I will see you guys next Sunday. I'm out. Peace.